Hello and thanks for staying with us. Welcome to Political Platform on Raypower FM. My name is Amichano. We're now the governor of Kwara State. Was at the State House Abuja yesterday to brief the president on the situation on ground after around 100 were killed in two communities in Kayama local government area of the state. Scores of others abducted, mostly women and children. Before he flew to Abuja, he visited the affected communities. And length is 8 hours from a lorry because of the deplorable route condition. 8 hours from a lorry to Moro, and the other is a local community in Kayama local government area of Kwara State. Now, we are getting more details. There have been letters written to the community members by the terrorists who came or are spreading a distorted brand of Islamic doctrine and perhaps failure to agree to their doctrine, adopt it, and the fact that they shared some intels with the security agencies and they deployed may have infuriated them and leading to the attack. So what we can take away is that those communities that are not attacked yet have signed into those distorted doctrine. What are these doctrine? You remember the Boko Haram doctrine? Boko is haram, Western education is forbidden and all that. So it may not be different from what they're feeding them in that part of the country. And my fear, as I'm joined by Teve Tiav and Adeba Aborori, is the reaction of the Nigerian government. We always reacting, deploying number of troops, visits, and to wait for the next attack to happen. It's a policy of containment. Let's contain them. Let's make sure they don't move from here to there. It's not a policy or a strategy of dislodgement, extermination, drive them away from the boundaries of Nigeria and the face of the earth. We seem to be comfortable with the fact that they are restricted to the forest area around the Kayenji, or they are within the deepest part of what's the name of that forest in Borno now? Sambisa Forest. Oh, we've pushed them into the caves. We appear to be comfortable with that. And it applies to kidnappers that are along our routes. What you see security agencies and government do is to put patrols and checkpoints along the roads. They have abandoned the bushes. They wouldn't want to go into the bushes to smoke them out and dislodge them. They just want to secure the roads. And it's being clever by half. It's just a matter of time before they strike again. That's why for kidnapping, they do strike between two checkpoints, sometimes less than 500 kilometers apart. So it tells you that that strategy is not working. So except the Nigerian government adopts a different strategy of this, taking the fight to them and dealing with them rather than containment, it's just a matter of time before we hear of another attack.
Thank you, Amishi, and good morning to TV in the studio, and good morning to our listeners out there. It's not a shameful development, what is happening in Kwara. And sadly enough, my mind flashes back to 45 years ago when the Metasine uprising took place in Kano. I was a reporter in Kano. I covered that uprising. And I know how deadly it was. Here is a group of people a man came from Cameroon, arrived in Kano, and started introducing doctrine that almost everybody were afraid of.
Radical, distorted doctrine.
Yeah. And the emir of Kano then, the grandfather of the current emir, Sanusi, deported him because traditional rulers have power then. Immediately, the emir was deposed. He returned to Kano.
I started preaching the doctrine.
I started expanding. And it took the courage of Abubakar to give a marching order to leave Kano. And it was At that stage, they now realized the fact that he has massed followers from neighboring Nigeria, from Chad,
poor, uneducated,
from Chad,
illiterates who easily sway in into
from Niger, from Cameroon. They were already in Kano. And so it was not difficult for them to unleash mayhem. That for a period of close to almost 1 week plus, Kano was in turmoil. No, the streets were instead of rain, what we witnessed was blood almost everywhere. So what I'm raising this issue today is that there was a judicial commission of inquiry on the Metasine riot in Kano 45 years ago. And what is happening now is exactly, if you have a copy of the Metasine probe report 45 years ago, you just play back exactly what is happening in Kwara is exactly what play out. So are we learning?
We have refused to learn from history.
That report, instead of acting on it, was politicized. The then government, MPN government, the federal government, who set up the Anagolu report, what they did with it was to start laying blames because we were preparing, those as we are preparing for election now, it was also election time. So it's easier to...
We are looking at the votes rather than security.
Yeah, they were and so that report remained unimplemented. What pained me most was that report, I'm sure it will be gathering dust in one corner, in many... That is even if
you can trace it.
If it's in existence. But I have a copy. I have a copy of that report. I have a copy of the politicized white paper. And when I look at, I go into my library, I look at that report, I just look at what is happening now is that our inability to implement that report is exactly what is causing all this problem for us. Because you would be surprised that the report raised a scenario of what will happen in future. And it is happening. It is happening. So it's the same thing we do, what we are doing now. We are just engaging in lamentation. Prompt actions are not taken. Mahmuda just surfaced, the Mahmuda group surfaced, terrorists surfaced, and they're expanding, and nothing is being done. And we're just watching them expanding.
We are deploying. The president has ordered the deployment. The IG orders the deployment of tactical. They order the deployment of this. The names they call it is what amazing.
And it will end there. So what are we doing to root these people out? These are people who are shedding blood. Anybody who shed blood must not be placated.
Okay.
Must not plead with them. Government must take prompt action to ensure the Nigerians can live a peaceful life.
Amechi, good morning to you. Good morning, listener. Perhaps two quick interventions. I've gone through the Nigeria counterterrorism strategy cover to cover. I've done detailed study of it, written several position papers on it with review and all of that. And they've reviewed it again, and when you pick it and you look at it, you see the missing links. What from the white paper we had in Kano, what we've seen in with the case of Boko Haram, what we've seen with what is happening with the Mahmuda group in Kwara and parts of Kogi State and all of that, is if that missing link was not there, we most probably would have dealt with the issue. And what is the missing link? Involvement of the people in fighting, the intrusion of the terrorist groups. If we pick up the counterterrorism policy, the media has been excluded completely. I think the only mention of the public television station, a public broadcaster, even the public radio station has not been mentioned, not to talk of any other media organization. What am I driving at? the recommendation I made in my position papers was that, look, government should be able to, plant moderate Islamic messages across media platforms. Don't forget, we're just heading towards Ramadan. And I'm not surprised.
It starts on 18th of
February. I'm not surprised this is coming. And by the time Ramadan is here, the tafsir, and all of that. So government should get moderate Islamic scholars with the moderate messages and doctrines and all of that. Our people in the North...
Is that why RFI tried to register preachers?
Most probably, even Niger State, most recently, was saying people should come and register and all of that. Because if we listen to some of the messages these people preach, if we listen to some of the
distorted the Holy Quran,
promoting violence, and
we look the other way. Because those receiving these messages are uneducated. They can't think by themselves reasonably. They are poor, so they're easily swayed into accepting this doctrine.
So it's a major crisis, a major issue that we need to deal with. From my study of even education as a teacher, Islamic education, the mode of teaching is indoctrination, where very few questions are asked by those who are put through under such teaching, and all of that. So we need to plant moderate preachers with moderate messages across the North. And the media platforms are there. How much will it cost the National Orientation Agency, the Federal Ministry of Information, the State Ministries of Education, of Information, and all of that to plant these messages?
What would they use security votes for? Other than to siphon it for personal aggrandizement?
What will it stop us? We even town criers, that you put some of these tapes and these guys are driving around in markets, and all of that on market days. You will be amazed at the number of people who will listen, to that. So with that, you'll be able to, reorient the population with the right, because Islam is a religion of peace. I've read the Quran. If you go through it, it's a religion of peace.
It is. What they do is to distort it,
and they are giving Islam a bad name.
And the more we keep quiet, the more we send that erroneous message that Islam is not a religion of peace. Why it is? It's clearly spelled out that you must consider the welfare and interest of a non-Muslim first before that of a Muslim. This is there in the Quran.
So that is one aspect of what we need to do. The second intervention I was going to make is where you started. We must take the fight to these terrorists. They've already infiltrated. So whatever you are doing with the messaging and all of that is what will help us in the long term, in solving the problem. But in the short and medium term, we need to intervene. We need to dismantle. It's not just waiting for they kidnap, you go and discuss, get them out and all of that. They come out, in this Kwara we're talking about, the official death toll is 75. That is huge. It's huge for any community. It is what should stop a country. Should stop a country from moving.
Stop government activity
and think about 75 human beings.
Do they care? They rarely care beyond what we have ordered. And life continues. They continue plotting for 2027. They continue making for plans, how to grab this, how to grab that. Because these lives, it's just a question of numbers for them. So leaders must realize that it is their responsibility. For any Nigerian that is killed, is a failure on the part of the security agencies, and is a failure on the part of the government, right from the local government chairman, the state governor, and the president. You have failed woefully for every Nigerian killed, and you're unable to solve it. It's not that there are no violent crimes out there. Yes, we know there are more violent crimes, but they resolve and solve most of them. So when you don't solve them, and when you can't protect citizens, then it throws up a lot of issues.
And I must call out the governor of Kwara State. After he briefed the president, what did he do? He went back with the APC national chairman and the National Assembly members, leaders, and all of that, discussing APC congresses with the president.
In Abuja.
Yes, he should not have been part of that delegation.
What did I tell you?
He should not
It's
have been
just
part of
another
that.
number.
If the death of one human being out of the 75 means anything to him, he should not have been part of that delegation for any reason. But he followed them.
So he came to Abuja saying, "No, I came to brief the." What are you briefing the president? You should be on ground.
The good thing is he was there.
Are you the chief of army staff to brief the president? You must be on ground coordinating rescue operation because women and children were abducted, coordinating relief materials, coordinating security deployment. That he should be there.
Immediately after that briefing, he should have flown back to Kwara, to go and attend to, those issues, and not following party people to go and be discussing controversies.
It's the federal government that should go there to meet him, not the state.
He went. He visited him.
No, I said the state government coming to Abuja is an aberration.
He came to brief.
Elsewhere where you have a federal system, the federal government moves to go and meet the people concerned. So he has no business coming to Abuja. That's what I'm saying. It's Aso that should go there to meet him and start the governor and the people. We commiserate with you. We feel your pain, and together we can deal with this situation rather than this photo opportunity. Oh, I came to brief the president and to thank him for the quick response. It's just symbolic. It doesn't have much impact on the issue at stake. Are we talking about those that have their houses burnt? Where do they sleep? Those that have accepted this preaching that has spread, how do we recover and retrieve them and all that? Before we take our break.
Yeah, but Michi, let me also correct one impression. The impression is being given as if it's only the uneducated, the abandoned, the neglected that have been misled. Even educated people, supposedly educated people, are also being indoctrinated.
Correct.
With this false preaching to be violent. And so it's not just a case where we concentrate, we'll be thinking of the marginalized group alone. We'll be thinking of the entire society.
After all, a PhD holder who served as a minister in Buhari's government was preaching a sympathy to terrorism.
I don't want to mention his name. I was in Bauchi State.
Why wouldn't you mention his name? He said he has repented. Now, who says he's a professor now? He's he had the mosque that he was the imam and all of that. And some of the messages he was preaching in those places were completely. So you're aligned with what Badr has said.
It's not only the marginalized, even the educated people. So is the entire society will be targeting in ensuring that this false preaching, this false sermon, this tendency to push people to violence is actually curbed.
Okay, let's go for your mails. When we come back, we take you to the National Assembly. We'll be giving you the names of the Joint Committee members, the Harmonization Committee, and we'll be pointing out areas of disagreement between what the Senate passed and what the House of Rep passed in terms of the Electoral Act amendment. Barry is there with your mails.
Thank you, Amechi. Good morning and welcome to the mail segment. I am Olamide Aweyo. Elon Fred writing from Kari, Nasarawa State, and it says the rising insecurity in Nigeria is becoming unbearable. People can no longer sleep in their house with two eyes closed. They can't go to their farm anymore due to the fear of terrorist attacks. People are being slaughtered on a daily basis, like chickens, and nothing is being done. Yet, President Bola Tinubu is busy traveling around the world in the name of seeking for investors and signing MOU. This is insensitive. It's high time we spoke out. We can't continue in this mess. I therefore call on President Bola Tinubu and all the political office holders to swing into action to eradicate this problem before it gets out of hand. Hundreds of lives massacred in cold blood in one community in a single day in Kwara State. This is totally inhumane and disheartening. May God help us in this part of the world. And Christine Victor from Kubo in Abuja says, dear crew, listening to all the mails sent into your program yesterday, I felt pity for our generation and the generation unborn. Now listen, there's nothing wrong with Nigeria as a country. There's nothing wrong with the land, and there's nothing wrong with the people. The only thing that is very wrong in Nigeria is a system of leadership. How can they refuse and reject the electoral reform which is supposed to correct all errors? This is because of the selfish interest. This is the reason why nothing is working in Nigeria. Our leaders are not concerned about the health sector, electric power supply, the bad condition of Nigerian roads, several terrible state of the nation. Things are not working because they don't want it to work. God help Nigeria. Anubu Naifoke from Wuse in Abuja said, "Dear political platform crew members, I would like to use this opportunity to express my deep displeasure with our National Assembly, particularly the Senate, for their refusal to amend the Electoral Act to mandate the compulsory transmission of electoral results from polling units to the main INEC server. This refusal is alarming and should raise concerns for any right-thinking Nigerian, especially in light of the irregularities witnessed during and after the 2023 general election. The issues that emerged as the electoral process transitioned from the field to the courtroom are particularly troubling. The Senate must remember that they were elected to represent us, champion our interests, and protect our rights at all times. Any actions motivated by parochial interests are an affront to the dignity of Nigerians and should not be tolerated. The National Assembly has been dragging its feet on this matter, and many of us have reached our breaking point. I urge the Senate to seize the opportunity during the upcoming harmonization meeting in both chambers to rectify the situation. If they fail to do so, we will be compelled to remind them that 109 is a small number compared to the collective voice of the Nigerian people." And Ugochukwu Godwin from Lagos says the Senate did not reject electronic transmission of results. They did not accept mandatory real-time transmission of results. Even Ghana, that Balogun Bodunrin was praising, they didn't use real-time transmission of results in 2024 because electronic transmission of results in Ghana was compromised in 2016. Ghana collates physically forms from polling units to constituency and regional levels. Nigeria does not have the internet connectivity, especially in the rural areas, to make it compulsory to transmit results real time. I don't have network in my village in Agwala. In Gombe State, I travel from Shogom to Katugo or Billeri to make calls. If the Senate had accepted real-time transmission and most results were not uploaded, we will shout rigging. If all political parties present party agents that are credible, what's the worry about? Too much laws in Nigeria and less implementation. And lastly, on the news segment, Beshima Orlando in Abuja says, "My attention is drawn to an aberration in the 2026 budget purportedly orchestrated by Shehu Diko, the chairman of Nigeria Sports Commission, who, out of ignorance or lack of knowledge of public service administration, has called for the mopping up of all recreations or sports-related budgets in all ministries, departments, and agencies. I want to point out categorically that all government budgets have cross-cutting elements in the overheads votes and must be allowed to flow as such without interference. For example, while there is Federal Ministry of Health, the military also has tertiary and all categories of hospitals and medical clinics that are not directly run by the Health Ministry. Likewise, sports and recreation is a budgetary line item in other MDAs meant for recreation and mental well-being of the staff therein, and the NSA has no business with it. My advice to the government is to make it mandatory for all political appointees to be given mentorship and enroll for orientation programs before taking up office to avoid such misconstrued priorities like the obnoxious request made by DICO to mop up all recreation subheads in MDA's overheads to beef up NSC annual budget. This will cause conflict among the federal MDAs and setback to administrative activities that will go a long way in affecting the civil servants and could result in industrial crisis. And that's all we can take on the mail segment today. Keep sending in your letters with your name and your location to political platform at that group. Let's go.
Thank you so much for the mails. The last mail talked about the move by the Sports Commission to Colombia, as we say in local parlance, or the allocations meant for sports in other MDAs. And I went through, as I was going through the budget, I also went through the budget of the National Sports Commission, and I saw that they also had provisions for health, for transport, for this. So should the Minister of Health say, and say, give me all the components that have to do with transport. We want to Colombia our own as you're doing your own. So if the federal government wants to make it a policy, they should come out clearly and say, we are decentralizing. You can't just wake up one day and say, oh, we'll do it. This is a period of federalism. You should be decentralizing to achieve greater efficiency and effectiveness rather than trying to collect everything. It breeds inefficiency and breeds corruption in the process.
That's why that ministry was transformed into a commission and brought under the presidency. Perhaps Diko doesn't know, understand. They call him a technocrat. When they appointed, people were clapping and all of that. I was not expecting that this is what he would do. And he should put off his thinking cap, like I said the other time. Go out and look for sponsors. We shouldn't, along with the federations, there's no reason why the Nigeria Premier League, the Division 2 NNL, basketball where he was, volleyball and all of that should not have serious sponsors. You know, you have more than enough money not to be looking for the peanuts that are being shared across the ministries that may not even be released in the first instance.
Okay, quickly, let's acknowledge the comments on our YouTube page where you have some live chats. Mohammed says, thank you for acknowledging Islam as the religion of peace. Ola Matthew says, the North should implement a free primary and secondary education to increase literacy level. It should be a deliberate attempt. This will reduce a lot of social problems, including insecurity. Choba Solomon says, Balogo has given us history that Nigerian government removed from syllabus. History is about repeating itself. Even Boko Haram's ideology is also a religious rascality and its politics everywhere. Okay, let's quickly go to the National Assembly. We are hearing protests are being lined up on Monday. Civil society organizations are saying they will go and occupy the National Assembly to teach the Senate President and the other senators who have been accused of doctrine the agreement reached in the executive section. It's an era of allegations of doctrine. They said the other senators led by Abaribe said they agreed on electronic transmission only for the Senate President to wangle his way to report otherwise. So since they made that allegation, the Senate President is there to respond. He has kept quiet.
If I were God, I also keep quiet. The Abaribe group should be ashamed of themselves. You know, and in that, both in the House of Reps and you see people moving around, noise making, and they acknowledged that yesterday, that there was so much noise that they didn't hear what was. How can you?
No, I thought I saw Abaribe try to raise issues.
That was after it was passed. Now
one senator raised it. It was seconded by the Deputy Senate President, and Abaribe tried to counter. They overruled it.
He said he didn't hear what they said. That was what he was saying. That they didn't hear what, and even if return transmission, that's not what the group came to say. They only said transmission of electronic transmission of results. It was Ireti Kigibe by the side. They keep saying return. There was no. It was not part of it.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, you see the process. I studied the video. I took time to study the video of the passage of the manner, the way and manner that announcement was made. It was done deliberately for mischief, deliberately to deceive even the senators who are seated. Within a split of seconds, the government was put. The government he used the government within seconds. Look, immediately Munguno spoke. Before anybody could say anything,
to counter,
the government has landed within seconds. I studied it more than 1 hour.
Because I saw
more than 1 hour. So there was deceit. There was deceit.
So those of them that were making noise, the Electoral Act, something as serious as
noise they
acknowledged it now. Abaribe group acknowledged that there was so much noise, so much this and all. So that also tells you. And if it were in a serious legislative chamber, there's no reason why we should not have electronic voting on some of these things. That is not to be for somebody coming to raise.
That's why they cleverly, and Co cleverly turned it to an executive session. And the senators, that's when I expected them to have shouted and said, no, we won't be part of this executive session. Let's make it open. In other parliaments, executive session, sometimes it comes once in the lifetime of a parliament. And it has to do with something about critical national security issue. But Nigeria's parliament have become, another name for them is executive session. When they want to do some bad deeds, they just close the door, chase everybody out, and as if the country belongs to them, as if Nigeria is not made by over 250 million people. They just come together and decide what they think will be in their best interest and say that's how we'll roll with it. So it's not for Nigeria to accept or reject. But the two chambers have come up with
the conference committee.
The committees that will conference and agree on which way to follow. For the House of Representatives, the chairman is Adebayo Balogu, APC, Fred Agbedi, PDP, Sada Soli, APC, Amadou Jaha, APC, Iduma Gariwe, Enwo, PDP, Seydou Musa Abdullahi, APC, Dr. Zainab Kimba, APC. For the Senate Conference Committee, you have Simon Bakolalong, Chairman, Ni Adebomire, member, Senator Mohamed Tahir Monguno, Adamu Alero, Ojuzo Kalo, Abamoro, Asukwe Peyong, Aminu Abbas, Tokumbo Abiru. I wonder why the number in the Senate is much more than that of the House. But when they meet, they have 1 week to do this. Yeah. There are areas of difference. On electronic transmission of results, the House favors clearer and more mandatory provisions empowering INEC to transmit election results electronically from polling units, subject mainly to technical feasibility. Senate takes a more restrictive or conditional approach in some instances, tying electronic transmission to approval or guidelines from INEC, raising concerns about possible political interference. Mode of primaries. House supports greater flexibility, allowing political parties to choose from direct, indirect, or consensus primaries. Senate pushes for stricter regulation of party primaries with provisions that critics say would and could limit internal party democracy or increase central control for party leadership. Why the House tried to make it more democratic, prescribing what the party should do. Senate says, party, do anything you like. A timeline for conduct of election. House proposes longer and clearer timelines for the conduct of primaries and submission of candidates' names. Senate suggests shorter or altered primaries, which stakeholders argue may put pressure on INEC and political parties and affect election preparedness. So they will agree to disagree. They will disagree to agree.
Even in 2021, 2020, I was reading an article one of our common friends sent to me. Clearly, this same issue of electronic transmission and other issues at the conference committee, I'm sure Nigerians will have their way. But we should put pressure. Those who want to go and protest their civil right to do it, we should put pressure on the
But the Senate President must respond to the allegations raised against him that the Senate as a whole agreed on a particular direction and himself and a few others altered. Is impeachable. If the senators understand parliamentary processes, they should start impeachment. I know it won't happen because it's APC dominated, but in the same climb, is an impeachable offense for the Senate President to be removed from office. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good time and have a good weekend.